Next up, we have John Whitticom. John leads he's a vice president of product development for all of our data management platforms globally. At the core of it, John leads Turbine. And Turbine, for us, is our proprietary DMP, and it focuses on a lot of what you're going to hear about today. At its core, it collects data across multiple platforms, multiple devices, globally. Next, we have to unify that data. What do we actually do with it? And that's a tall task that John does every day. And we look at things like interest, intent, expectations. And then finally, we have to activate on that. And for us, there could be no walls in our garden. So John's task is to be able to take that persistent identifier and be able to take it across all of our different platforms, all of our different inventory providers in real time, and then be able to activate on it. So what John's here to be able to talk about today is, and I'll click to it, excuse me for one moment, but John's going to talk about data scientists, fact or fiction. I know there's a lot about that, so please welcome John Whitticom.
Hey everyone, how are you? Based on that introduction, you should realize that it's kind of ironic that I was asked to talk about whether data science was fact or fiction. And to give you kind of a bit of background on what we do as Xaxis, we look at about a trillion data points yearly to understand what's happening with consumers. And we have over 150 people dedicated to understand how to create products out of data. So we're a very data-driven organization, so therefore you should know this is a very biased presentation. I believe data science is actually real, right? And in fact, when I told my team what I was talking about, they were really intrigued about the prospect of how could people think that data science isn't real? And because we're big data nerds, we decided we would gather more data to prove that data science was actually real, right? And what we did is we sent out a survey to 150 business leaders out there, and we tried to understand what they don't understand about data science. And for you in the back, I apologize, this is going to be an eye test to some extent. But what you see over here on the right side is that people realize data is important. They realize having it to make decisions is paramount to their success, and they think data science is going to be a strategic advantage for them long term. Right? So if you look at the scale on the vertical, up and down, shows you how important it is. Right to left is if they agree with the statements. This is the area I'm going to talk about today. Specifically, we're going to talk about whether people understand how data science actually works, the constraints inherent in data science, and talk about how to get results that are actually useful. Right? And to do that, we're going to talk about cheese, right? Why wouldn't we? So when you talk about cheese consumption in the US, it's growing pretty astronomically. It's about 10% over the last 5 years, and people are eating more and more of it. And so you have to ask yourself, why? Is it because we're getting fatter and we like more cheese? Is it because cracker sales are increasing? Or is it because people keep drinking more wine? Or is it a completely random variable like the Kardashians, selfies, or people dying in their sleep? Well, the answer is actually really funny. It's people dying in their sleep. Specifically, they die by getting tangled in their bed sheets, right? This is a very strong correlation. It's something that shouldn't be ignored, but it doesn't necessarily mean anything. And in data science, what we try and figure out is why is that happening, right? Here's another great example. Why are bees declining in the US? We're in Vegas. Find somebody next to you, make a gamble, right? Take a bet. Is it police? Is it tea? Is it random noise? Answer for this one, right? It's police action. Specifically, it's the number of people being arrested for marijuana usage. So maybe if we stop arresting people for smoking weed, we can save the bees, right? It's a really high correlation, right? So why do people make these mistakes all the time? Because I see it all the time. And it's because people think data science is this. Really smart people with computers and really smart people with calculators. But they're missing the real core component to data science. It's having somebody who has domain expertise, right? Without having somebody to guide the team, you will inherently fail in your data science efforts. That's just a fact. The other problem, I want to believe, right? Every time I go to see my doctor, he asks me, are you drinking enough red wine to keep your cholesterol down? It'll help you live longer. I always say, no, I'm not, and I should drink more. That has nothing to do with my health, and if you look at the studies about that, that's complete garbage, and people have realized it, but they still embrace it. Because they want to, right? 2 is every analysis can have an agenda. If somebody comes to you with a number, you have to ask why. You have to ask poignant questions to figure out what's underlying that data. This is arguably the most important thing we're going to talk about, which is understanding the business trade-offs you're making in your data science. When you think about data science, there are really 5 dimensions that actually impact your business substantially, right? It's the speed at which you have to respond to that data. It's the data complexity itself and how it's structured. It's the size of the data you're trying to actually manage and deal with and process. It's determining how accurate and how precise you want your calculations and your actual scoring and all your algorithms to be. And it's, more importantly, how complex you're going to make your algorithms, right? We're going to talk about all these really quickly because I only have a couple more minutes and I want us to enjoy the rest of the afternoon. But rate, right? Speed is something that's becoming very important for us at Xaxis. The life of a cookie is getting shorter and shorter and shorter, and the opportunity to learn about it and actually make it actionable is something that is paramount for us, right? We score and calculate about 25,000 users per second and get it into a DSP in less than 5 seconds. And the reason we do that is we know that fresh data is critical. And it's something you have to ask people about in your organization. Next is the data complexity. People keep capturing more and more data, but they don't think fundamentally about the real reason why. And they don't ask the questions about how many dimensions there are, how many columns there are, how am I going to actually process all of this? Data size is something we struggle with internally, right? We looked at 1,000 different observations on a user last year. This year we'll probably do about 5. So when you talk about scaling and growth and complexity around that, it's a real issue. How do you deal with that much data coming in? How do you understand what's important? How do you deal with the different document repositories you have, the different rows in your database? And accurate and precision is something that's very important too. Are you using sampling? Do you really need to be 100% right, or are you just looking to be 80% right? All of these things are actually, last is algorithm analytic complexity. You're using random forest, are you using SVM, are you using model ensemble? All those different buzzwords you hear all have a real impact on what you're going to be able to successfully do in your data science strategy, right? As I said, these are all trade-offs. So when you talk to your data science team, you have to understand what's the business objective for this, and where am I willing to give and take? This is a zero-sum game. You can't have it all. And if you try to have it all, you're going to fail. You have to understand what is actually important for your business and how are you going to get it there, right? So I have 2 more minutes, so let's walk through this really quickly, right? If there are 4 points I would say you should walk away with, one is making sure you define what data science is and making sure that it's a clear statement in your company, right? Data science for us is 2 things. It has to be something that's actionable, and it has to result in a product. If it's not, it's analytics or business intelligence, both of which are important. But you have to understand the differential there, right? 2 is finding a unicorn in data science is almost impossible, right? Finding somebody who is both mathematically competent, computer science savvy, and a domain expert is something that every company struggles with. You have to understand how to create your teams and how to balance them. That's how you get good results. Right? And the last one, right, or actually I combined it, the first and the last, sorry, is how do you actually understand the balances and the trade-offs? And this is when you have to sit down with your data science team and have them understand your business. Because inherently there are businesses who like to take their data science team, put them in a black box, and have them do whatever they think they need to do. If you don't have them understand the underlying fundamentals of your business, they're going to fail because they don't understand why they're doing what they're doing. And that kind of thing eventually comes back to bite you, and it causes a real issue long-term for your company. So those are my 4, and my little last one is very small. I don't know why. Sorry. Let's chalk that up to technical constraints. And that's all I have to say. So thank you, everybody.